Though I didn't feel anything immediately, later on that night, I had a really kind of profound Kundalini experience.
Ah, oh,
And
wow, that's very interesting. Please,
yeah,
my dear friends, welcome back to my channel. And my name is Giacomo Longato. I'm Peruvian American living in California. I'm independent author and researcher with a special emphasis on the Andean megalithic sites in Cusco, as well as other parts of the world. Today, I'm very glad to have Camille Sauvé, an American expat living in the heart of the Andes, living in Cusco, living, to be more precise, in the Sacred Valley of Cusco. What a beautiful place. And she's the author of the book Sorcerers of the Stone, The Architects of the Three Ages, a book that I really recommend to everybody to read to understand more this complex subject of ancient civilizations. Camille, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me, Giacomo.
Please
Yeah,
tell
it's
us a
great.
little bit about you and how you decided to write this book.
The first time I came to Peru was about 13 years ago. I just fell in love with everything that I saw here, the culture, the people, um, but mainly this archaeology that was everywhere. I was so fascinated with the city of Cusco and just walking down the streets and seeing, just the evidence of three different cultures. And at that time, I wasn't really clear
Mhm.
if I were looking at three different cultures, but I later came to the conclusion that I was probably looking at three different cultures. Um, but you would see these polygonal megaliths like on the street Hatun Rumiak. Um, and then you would see the colonial style, which was on top of it. And then you would see Inca style and possibly Quilque style.
What happened to Camille to
Mhm.
decide to move to Peru and to do some research there? Because your
Yeah,
book is really, really interesting for all the readers of this subject.
right. Well, I decided, well, after that first trip 13 years ago, I came back and I had a career and, I was working in graphic design and marketing. Um, and a few years back, I also moved to Hawaii to live in a Yogananda retreat. And because there was a volcanic eruption in that time, that was 2018, um, it was really chaotic. And I said, well, where can I go that I know I have had great experiences and had, uh, uh, there were things that were really interesting me. And I remembered Peru from 13 years ago. And I said, I think I'm going to go back to Peru. And I did. And this was right before the pandemic hit,
Oh my
the
God.
the big pandemic. So I actually came like 2 months before the pandemic.
Wow.
And then I decided to overstay a little bit and pay multas,
Sure.
and then the pandemic hit, and I was kind of stuck here. But I was happily stuck in Peru, and I
Under
see
these
that,
these circumstances from
yeah,
Hawaii to Cusco and then the pandemic,
and then pandemic, yeah,
really like telling you, Camille safe
yeah.
here.
So I found these sites kind of in the back of the citadel walls in Sacsayhuaman, and I really started exploring. I checked out the Grand Chincana. Um, I'd go to Kenko, Little Kenko, various other sites, the Moon Temple, and I would spend a great deal of time just walking in the back and really looking at the stones, um, which the more I looked at them, the more they started fascinating me, and because I saw like really strange things that really didn't fit in the narrative that conventional archaeologists were telling people about these stones.
Right. But you were also telling me that you've been traveling a lot in Europe. You've been in Malta, Greece, Italy, in other places. There are megalithic constructions.
Right.
So there
Yeah,
was
that
something
was
back in your mind.
sometime in the past.
Huh?
Yes.
Something
Yeah.
back in your mind there, right?
Right, exactly. But here in Peru, I I began to notice there were some, architectural styles that people don't really talk about that much. I mean, I know the archaeologists
Yeah.
Obviously they knew about Kenko and various other structures, but people tended to say, well, these were like royal Inca style, or
Right.
and they just didn't match with what I was observing with known Inca buildings. They were monolithic styles. They had seats on them. They had strange canals on them. It looked like also people were manipulating the stones almost like with their fingers or trowels, It looked like the stone was softened. And I have countless photographs of like images where it looks like, there was some hand that was forming these canals on the rock.
Right. When it was in a semi-solid state,
Yes, that's kind of
formula that pour into the rock surface, and they were able
right.
to soften it, especially in the area that you just mentioned, Chincana, which means labyrinth. The translation
Yes.
Quechua to Spanish and English, and
Right.
all those megaliths look like really doesn't belong to the Inca imperial architecture on the back of Sacsayhuaman, that's
Yes.
upside down stairs. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
huge rocks there. So that
Yeah.
was really impressive for you.
Yes, that was very impressive. And I, when I would go with guides, sometimes they would say, well, this is all Inca, and I'm looking at this ancient style. And then I would notice also there were megalithic, polygonal megalithic that was on top of this earlier style. And then sometimes you would see Inca stuff or more recent building
Right.
right on top of that megalithic and in the earlier style. I decided to do some research into this, and I found the work of Alfredo Gamarra, who is a Cuscanian. He died a few years back, but his son still lives in Cusco. And he noticed these three different styles as well.
Right.
And he described them as Hanan Pacha, which is heaven above, Udan Pacha, which is heaven below, and then Ukun Pacha, which is heaven inside. And so the Hanan Pacha was this oldest style, which
Right. The original
remained.
primal style, right? According
Yes.
to Alfredo Gamarra.
Right, exactly. And then the fact that you can see this like overbuilding on top, like the older style, middle style, and then the latest style on top, seemed to indicate there were different cultures involved and on a different timeline. The cultures that built on top of it, like recognized it as something special, maybe something sacred. And
Definitely, because even Peruvian historians, that Maria
mhm,
Rostowski and others,
mhm,
said that the Incas rebuilt and reconstruct many of these sites. I don't know
right,
what that exactly, but they were able to preserve and respect the previous work of the elders
the
of,
elders, yes,
lost in time.
right.
So that at least that part is recognized, and
Mhm.
that's what makes more interesting this subject of ancient civilizations. So, but you also, I've seen many of your photographs on Facebook,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
you also have been exploring those sites that are not known to the public or
Right.
less visited by the public. When
Yes.
you have these cuts in 90 angle degree inside huge rocks, inside, like something like a big knife, into
Mhm.
a mochis. Got it like this,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, exactly. And just recently, yeah, I went up to the Chachapoyas area and
Oh, wow.
Cajamarca.
Yes.
And this is something I've never seen on any website, but nobody has talked about this earlier Pacha underneath Cuelap, which is in the Chachapoyas area. And I found like really amazing rocks, which had basins put into them. You can see the finger marks like pressing into the rock. And
Really? That's impressive, Camille.
yeah, and that's in Cuela. But everybody else talks about, the Chachapoya
It's
civilization
like Cusco
also.
is only Machu Picchu and it's only the Incas, and there are Inca thrones everywhere.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Everything is an Inca throne. So yeah, when you think of Chachapoyas, which is a beautiful site, and the civilization did these amazing stone circular buildings, and they would put patterns into the building, but you don't have like clear evidence of what looks like a geopolymer or a softened stone. But underneath it, you do see it. So it was kind of interesting that that I have found on the internet, nobody has really mentioned this.
Well,
You know,
that's impressive because
yeah,
I mean it tells it is you're telling us it's something that people really believe,
mhm,
that there was something an unknown presence in
yeah,
remote times in the Andes. That it
yeah,
looks
yeah,
like they found this area and starting to build around those sites, but
mhm,
also they're very energetic places. There are
yes,
places with ley lines. There are places that these,
yeah,
you know, strange effects. You
yeah,
know
yeah.
exactly, and you've been there, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially like in the Cusco area, they have what they call the CK lines, coming out of the Coricancha, yeah, all around it. I think there's 42 of these lines. And they found like many of the wakas are right on top of these lines. So they're probably ley lines, or some kind of
Exactly.
energetic uh, discontinuity zones, where two pieces of land are with different strata meet. And sometimes they have energy that flows through these two different landmass. According to Brian Bauer, he said
Right,
that
right.
many of these wakas are right on top of these CK lines. And this is where priests, especially in Inca time, priests would go to these wakas and use them as
Talk to the
oracles.
Wakas, right? Talk. They have
Yeah.
predictions. They have visions. They have these
Yes.
extraordinary experiences, right?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And they would use them as oracles. And then they'd go back and tell the Sapa Inca, this is what we picked up, in these oracles, in these waka sacred sites. Um, So I don't know if, I don't believe anybody has actually gotten there with very sensitive equipment to measure. I do find things
That will be
really,
something to do. It's a homework to do for people who wants to find out more about these places, these
yeah,
magnetic power places,
yes,
chakras of
exactly.
the planet, ley lines, sekes.
Yeah. And I find like I bring my dowsing rods to these
Huh.
places. And I do find like there's one place behind the Moon Temple. I think I call that the Plots Monument. And I do seem to, it's a kind of a beehive shape. And
Oh,
inside is an alcove with a niche there. And
yes.
lots of Pacos go there and, spiritual
Paco
people.
means shamans.
Is a
And
shaman
Andean priests, shamans.
Andean priest,
There are
right?
Andean priests in still alive and
Oh,
practice
totally.
the ritual.
Yes.
If you go
Yeah.
to this, excuse me the interruption, you go to these
Yeah.
archaeological sites, especially in caverns, caves, there
Yeah.
has been, megalithic constructions. Like you found coca lips and certain
Oh,
objects of
yeah.
rituals there. Don't
Yeah.
touch them. Don't
Yeah.
respect. Don't
No,
touch.
you don't touch them.
But
Um,
keep
and the
going.
nice thing is there seems to be more of this kind of activity recently. I've noticed like
Huh.
a lot of people are bringing flowers and they bring fruits and quintus, coca leaves.
You told me, sorry to interrupt you. I
Uh,
can't back to Cajamarca. You sent me a picture of the El Cuarto de Rescate, the
mhm.
rescue temple in Cajamarca, but you found something else there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, um, Yeah, I mean, I'm not the first to find this. There are archaeologists there who do know that there's an older civilization underneath. But it seems today that they're just trying to get this information out about this Hanan Pacha work, which is underneath the Rescate de Alta Huapa. And, and this seems to be connected to a hill called Apolano Hill, which is a famous waka, which is right in the center of Cajamarca. And I noticed there was a plaque that was carved into the waka.
Huh.
And this was, I was told by a group that was doing archaeology in this area
So you
that,
were right there with the archaeologists talking, asking and talking to them.
well, no, I contacted them through Facebook later.
Okay.
I found out there was a group who was actually trying to preserve more of this earlier form of architectural style. And so they were bringing kids from the university, or students from the university and kids from the elementary schools to these sites so they can appreciate them and hopefully protect them. Because in the past, it looked like the city fathers of Cajamarca were more interested in paving over these old wakas. And it looks, from what I understood from this group in Cajamarca, that they actually paved roads and trails on top of this ancient waka in the 80s. So it wasn't even that old that this was done.
Oh,
so
wow.
people weren't appreciating what was here, and this evidence of this much older, civilization. And they would.
It looks like when I was, we watched this Ancient Apocalypse in Netflix with Graham Hancock. In the second episode, he started with a visit to different pyramids, like Cholula, the ancient pyramid, the biggest ancient pyramid in the world, according to archaeologists. But all these temples have this megalithic site that were built upon on top of it, like the ransom room for Atahualpa in Cajamarca and in other places like in Cusco as well that you have seen. So all these explorations that you are still doing, because I see your face, you are very active in Cusco. There's so many areas that are less visited, but the opportunity to explore. So how you decided, I need to write a book?
I basically started kind of for me, because I was trying to figure out what was going on and how do I interpret all this. So I just started because it was a pandemic. I wasn't getting a lot of work,
But that was the best time. That was the best time for many authors, many creative people.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't really busy, and I didn't really need the money. Fortunately in Peru, it's a lot cheaper than in California to live. So,
especially in Cusco, cheaper than Lima City by far.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't really need to work. So I thought, well, I'm going to explore and do more research, and that just kind of opened up a lot of things. Like I was discovering, like a lot of these rocks had sound frequencies. Like if you knock on them, you can hear this very bell-like sound to the rocks, especially like in Ollantaytambo. There's a area called the 10 window area up by the Sun Temple.
Yes, before the entrance to the Sun Temple, right?
Right, and pretty much all the tour guides know that if you create a hum into these windows, you have this resonance, that will match the frequency.
Even in an open place.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
This
Well, it's open now, but at one time it probably wasn't closed. But you could still hear this echo, and it can go all the way across like the canyon at Ollantaytambo. And also in Machu Picchu, there is a room that has this,
Right. That's
similar.
the Intihuatana. before the Intihuatana, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it also has these great sound acoustics. And so, that would lead me into some areas in my book, which would explore like sound frequencies and healing, and possibly for the use of like raising your consciousness. And that I began to explore and found also like the Egyptians had many of their temples, which were basically sound resonance temples.
It's unbelievable. Like what a coincidence, really, even in the architecture in a different scale with Egypt and Cusco. But
Yeah.
please keep going.
Yeah, and you can also find some similarities like in design of like the polygonal types of rocks. And you can see similar kind of knob features on these rocks. So it does make you wonder if there was some, international travel, in the past where I don't know if people were getting here through boats or perhaps other devices, transcontinental,
Communication.
flight or something like that.
It was some
But it
sort of
does seem
communication.
like, yeah,
Maybe some sort of communication.
or communication as well.
Yeah.
And because there are similarities in design with the rocks, you can also see polygonal kind of shapes. Not quite, I haven't seen as much of that in Egypt. It does look like there were forms, but they tended to be more rectilinear,
Right.
and it's more organic here in Peru. The shapes are definitely more fluid and organic. But so these are questions that I pose in the book. Was there an ancient civilization that shared knowledge between continents, or perhaps maybe more in the past? And this is something I explored because Alfredo Gamara had mentioned that the Earth might have been smaller in the past.
Yes.
The continents might have been closer together or at one time actually touching. And
There were masses of land that they have disappeared through a
yes,
natural disaster that make things closer between the continents.
Yes. And that is something that's recorded in a lot of historical oral traditions and narratives that, I think there were over 300 cultures that describe that we had earth events that would destroy entire island continents. And this
is the word that archaeologists hate. You start with A and finish with S, Atlantis.
Atlantis and Lemuria. So, these are something like the Theosophists also bring up. They say in the past, there were many island continents, and Atlantis just didn't have one episode where it was destroyed, but it was a much larger island. Parts of it broke off in previous catastrophes, and the most recent one was probably before the Younger Dryas, or right at that time, that destroyed the last remnants of Atlantis.
We're talking about guys, 9,000, between roughly 9,000 to 12,000 years ago. It was a natural disaster, maybe a cosmic one, maybe a combination of as a situation of that magnitude, but also the idea that of the deluge, the universal deluge, that all these tales and myths talk about, that this destruction from heaven, that only the good people survive, the chosen ones, is the story of Atlantis, the story, in other words, of an ancient civilization that perhaps migrated to better places. One of them was Cusco. One of these is in the Sacred Valley. So all the places that you've been exploring, because you are very active in that, I can tell through your Facebook and conversations that we exchange, communication. What is the place, the site that really caught your attention? What is your favorite place that you always go? From Sacsayhuaman, from Machu Picchu, from Ollantaytambo, from whatever. What are the places that you like the most?
Well, my favorite place is Sacsayhuaman. I would say a second is Ollantaytambo,
Right.
just because it's further from me from where I am. But I
Mhm.
love Ollantaytambo too. And you know, I think the thing is because people don't realize how big Sacsayhuaman really is. I mean, it's just not this citadel walls. I mean, it's a massive territory which has wakas all. I'm trying to remember how many hectares.
Next is really
Mhm.
Sacsayhuaman
Yeah,
National Park, which is
yeah.
5 kilometers at least around
Mhm.
the extension of that area, that archaeological site. And there is
Right.
something you just said, which is true. You can
Yeah.
see on the internet, you can see videos. Once you are there, once you're
Mhm.
close to those megaliths, you have a complete picture.
Mhm. Yes.
You wonder and leave you with more questions than answers. Please go on.
Yeah,
Go on.
exactly. And you know, I do take small groups up there to show them around because a lot of people who come here as visitors, they're just not aware how extensive the archaeology is and how really interesting it is. And so I can take them to places like what they call the Moon Temple, Marca Wasi, and
Amaro
uh,
Marcahuas is this, that's the X zone, the famous X,
yeah,
the temple
yeah,
of Moon
it's
and the
kind of
temple
in
of
that X area.
it's the X
And
area. Yes,
right, but there's so many of these sacred sites here, and
right.
they're like, you know, you can see on people's faces how shocked they are. They had no idea. And these are the kinds of places that, you know, these are the monoliths, so they're not the polygonal walls. But what some of the interesting features about them is they often have these caves,
Mhm.
which
Oh, yes.
are you know quite fascinating. And you go in there and you see really beautiful examples of vitrified rocks and shapes inside these caves. And sometimes you see animal shapes that look like crocodiles. You will see pumas, you know, um,
What
and
you,
then
what you,
and then a lot of snakes. That's why
oh,
they
definitely
call
the
it.
Ukupacha, the
Yes.
underworld, the
For
underground.
Inca Pacha, which is the world underground.
Yes.
And like in one of the caves, and I believe that's why they called it Amara Markawasi, because it means
Mhm.
snake cave. You'll see a really gigantic snake like formed into the wall, and you can see where it's been vitrified. So it's very shiny, and the light diffuses, you know, when you
You
look at
think
it.
about that because I think Alfredo Gamarra and his son Jesus have done an excellent job in showing all this. But what is your opinion about this sort of vitrification? It's highly polished, really, even
Yeah,
though
it's
it's, you know, in an open space, it's still
yeah,
under thousands of years. You
uh-huh,
can tell something. There was an
right.
ancient technology there.
Yeah, you know, and this is the thing. I mean, well, you know, there were chroniclers around at the time of the Inca, and they were aware of what kind of tools they were using. And there seems to be nothing in the Inca toolbox that looks like they could have heated this rock to the degree to make the stone really shiny. And especially you know, if you do get to the types of temperatures where you can vitrify things, I mean,
Mhm.
this is what we're talking about, like temperatures for kiln work, you know, for ceramics, and you're getting close to I don't know, 1500, I believe, Fahrenheit.
Exactly, like a thousand plus Celsius degree. You have,
Yes, it's
I
extremely
don't know in
hot temperature.
Fahrenheit, but in Celsius, it's extremely hot in just small places.
Yes, in just a small place. And sometimes you see just little ledges, you know, with 90-degree, you know, precision, you know, joints and stuff, and that'll be vitrified, but the rest of it won't. So how they did this without a kiln is kind of a strange mystery. You know, we
But
don't.
there's nothing written in the chronicles.
Yes,
The Spaniards
about
at
that.
that time were able to see, and no one told anything about that technique. There's no way.
Yes, yeah,
That is
exactly. Yeah.
perplexing.
it is perplexing. And then you have things like, well, you know, when we go back to looking at the megalithic work, we can see what looks like, and I know you covered this extensively in your videos, but you can see like scoop marks and what look like trowel marks. And sometimes you'll see them diagonally, you'll see them vertically and horizontally. And I talked with one well, he was a geologist,
Mhm.
and I said, well, how do you get these scoop marks?
Right, the
These,
good.
and he said it was
Trouble.
reduction.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, and he said it was a reduction with like copper tools. But I'm like, how do you do a rock that has a hardness of 7 or 8 on the Mohs scale of
Mm.
hardness of rock and use copper tools and then make these perfect scoop marks? It just doesn't make sense. Um, and so you can see also like some stones that look like, I think they call it screeding, and that's where you can kind of comb the rock and you could push the
Right.
material. So
Exactly.
it's kind of a pillow shape. And then
Yes.
other parts are flat. And so you can see examples of this like all over in the Coricancha. You can see it in Sacsayhuaman.
Exactly. Well, there are plenty of those examples. If you look carefully, you know, you look closer, you'll find
yeah,
stuff that is just, you know, just you're passerby, you're walking a little bit
yeah,
like regular tourist, you'll miss it.
yeah, exactly. And frequently, because I'm here all the time and I'm walking around Cusco and the San Blas area. And when you do see like guided tours, you know, they pretty much just tell people what to think. You know, this is what happened. And instead of like having people really spend the time to observe what they're seeing. And I think that's really important. Don't tell people immediately, or maybe you shouldn't even tell people at all, but just let them observe with their own eyes. And then you can pose questions
I
like,
agree with you because I mean, if I would have been a tour guy, you
mhm,
know, which I've been a tour leader before, but when I said, you know, look closer, what do you think? I'm not
yeah,
telling it, I'm asking questions to the people what they're thinking.
right, exactly. And I think we need more of that instead of these tour guides saying, this is who built that, and this is the Royal Inca style, and blah, 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 blah. Because
Right?
sometimes people don't really, well, they think he's an authority figure, and he's an authority. I'm not. So you know, I'm just gonna listen to what he has to say.
You assume this is it, this is the real information, and
Right,
you know,
exactly.
and that's
Yeah.
the official narrative that
Yes,
sounds sometimes like a broken record, Camille.
yes, yeah,
I'm
exactly.
sure you have it's almost the same, different words, it's always the same thematic. It's always
Yeah.
the same, right?
Yeah. And I'm not that kind of person who really likes to be told, you know, what
Mhm.
to think. I'd rather first observe and then just kind of make up, you know, I will read certainly what mainstream scientists will say about it. But I also like to verify, well, okay, what are they basing their conclusions on? And to me, I don't see evidence of pounding stones being used to create these geopolymers, or copper stones. And also another theory was they lifted them, put them back down, lifted them by a hoist, put them back down, and then slowly chipped away with their copper tools and pounding stones. That it just doesn't make sense to me.
It makes sense, you know, because sometimes you in these tour groups, they're architects, they're engineers,
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
builders, constructors, and they
Right.
have a different, a more logical, common sense opinion
See,
and
yeah,
approach to this kind of construction, this kind of architecture, because
yeah.
I think, oh, I don't know what you think, but I think that we share the same opinion that Sacsayhuaman in this case is an anomaly.
Mhm.
Where is
Yeah,
another building like that in the American continent?
right. Yes.
Alaska to Patagonia. There's no other site like
Mm.
this. It's man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's
And
usual.
yeah, it's very unusual, and it's quite a large site, and I believe there's 3,000 stones, of giant stones fitted.
But you're in Cusco and you have visited Sacsayhuaman several times and you still find new things,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Every
Right.
time I go, I'm always finding something different. I was just recently up in the Pisac ruins, and
Mm.
it also is a very extensive site, but there's a much smaller megalithic site up there near the Intihuatana.
Yes.
And I was just walking behind it, and I noticed that there was a stone. It was a polygonal, and it had a round circle, and it was fitted perfectly. So it was like a semicircle fitted right into the next stone. So totally missed that in previous times to Pisac. So
Why you have to go to such hard work just to,
mhm.
make it those stones in different shapes together,
Right,
glued
yes.
mortarless, glued to each other. And
Yeah,
that is really something that, well,
yeah.
if you guys are telling me, why don't the Peruvian government, why don't, a group of engineers from Cusco, from Lima, whatever, build
Mhm.
one wall like Coricancha, build
Mhm.
one wall like Sacsayhuaman, if they can, with the
Right.
toolbox from the Incas that you
See,
can see in
yeah,
the museums.
yeah. No, I keep wondering why nobody has been able to, demonstrate this. Sometimes they try on smaller scale, but it takes so much time and energy, even on that smaller scale. I'm trying to remember the architect who said he was working on it. And he says, "Oh, it can be done, but it
Oh,
just took so much work."
think it was Jean Pierre Prosen. But I think he
Maybe that.
was, he tried, but with a small stone,
With small stones, right. And so the common trope that you hear is that with the Inca Empire, they had kind of limitless manpower and all this time on their hands. And I often wonder where that came from, and this is kind of where I think they're, archaeologists are fitting things into historical narrative that they can't quite explain, because they look at these walls and they must, if you're looking at the conventional tools that the Inca had, it would take a tremendous amount of time to do this. So there is a historical narrative, I think it's from Garcilosa, that there were 20,000 workers at Sacsayhuaman at one time building the site. But you can see that there were Inca buildings around
Right.
Sacsayhuaman, even on top of it. So, but Pedro Cieza de Leon also said what was there before the Incas were building on top of it was much grander than what the Incas had built. So,
And you mentioned initially about the Quilque culture, which is
mhm,
previous to the Inca Empire, but the
mhm.
difference, the gap in time is 200 years.
Yeah, 200 years before the
Here,
Inca.
before the Inca. And
Right,
ceramics and pottery belongs to the Quilque, so the Quilque also were the ones who supposedly built Sacsayhuaman.
right,
Or if
yes.
not, were the people from Tiahuanaco. But it's worse because it's 300 years
Yeah,
difference. The Tiahuanaco already
different.
vanished and disappeared three
Right.
centuries before the Incas still were exploring what is now Cusco.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I find these really mixed up timelines here. And as you were mentioning about the Quilque, they if you type in Google who built Sacsayhuaman, Quilque will come up.
Yes.
But there are archaeologists here who are working on known Quilque sites, and they don't look anything like the megalithic sites at Sacsayhuaman, the giant stones. Most of the Quilque sites are small, rough stones. Sometimes they have mortar in it, but they don't have that really pristine or nicer finish even of the Inca work, but certainly not of the megalithic work. And I probably have a picture of a Quilque building.
Please.
But yeah, it's really rough, and it doesn't, it's kind of absurd to say they were the builders of this megalithic work in Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo.
It is hard to believe that there was
Mhm.
a sequence of legacy in architectural design until the Incas arrived and, of
Mhm.
course, took over, and they are the ones responsible for everything. When I
Yeah.
see these places with the flat, seats, the Inca throne,
Mhm.
everywhere. So the Incas just
Yeah.
moved there and sat down and they say, I'm the Inca. This is my seat. I mean,
Yeah. I I tend to think there's a bit of a marketing campaign here for the
I
ministry.
think so. I
You
think
know, and it's
like
like
that, huh?
you know, it's the last known major civilization, and the Inca civilization was great, and it was grand, and it went, all the way up to Ecuador, to Chile, to Colombia. So it was a vast empire. Um, and because they didn't have written documents, they kind of assumed everything that they see here in Peru was actually Inca. Um, um, and but if a kind of rule of thumb is if you're looking at different kinds of architecture, it typically means you have different cultures, and since we can see that what are Inca buildings like around these and above these older ones, it doesn't fit that, this was the same culture. It was, very different styles, very different methods of construction. So it seems to me it's like easy to attribute to all of these sites to the Inca, but that that just doesn't seem very. I think a lot of people see through that and can see that there's, the different styles just really are so different that they must mean a more, an older culture was before the Inca.
And typically, every empire decide to have an official architecture.
Mhm.
You build a palace, had to be similar to that one and that one to leave your signature, leave your
Mhm.
seal there. But that's
Right.
what you said at the very beginning, and that's the difference, my dear friends. You're watching this interview with Camille Sauvé, and I really encourage you to buy her book, Sorcerers of the Stones, Architects of the Three Ages. That's the book. As the book, this beautiful cover, beautiful content, it tells us more, really, because we will need like 3 hours to talk about her book. It will tell us all this stuff because she also does a lot of trekking, hiking, and explorations in those areas that are less visited, just Sacsayhuaman area.
Mhm.
Just,
Yeah.
it's just, you love Sacsayhuaman, I love Sacsayhuaman, too. But there are
Right.
so many sites that really makes you wonder and trigger your imagination. There was
Yeah.
something else. And that is what she's talking about in her book, which is really, I think, is a breakthrough also to understand there was something else. It's like reading a book that's supposedly to have 20 chapters in
Mhm.
our history, but 8 chapters of those 20 were just vanished and we have an
Mhm.
incomplete history.
Yeah.
That puzzles us. That that is what make us wonder. And one of those places in the world, besides others, of course, is Cusco, is where Camille is living right now.
Yeah.
So Camille, do you like to do tours? I mean, so people can contact you for tours or other
Yeah.
related activities?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of doing this a little more informally right now with the
Mhm.
locals. But I am planning, I think, to have like more, people from international countries too come in. But right now I'm just kind of like, there's a lot of like expats and who live here, and they still don't know what's around. Just
Really?
30 minutes,
Wow, you have plenty of
30
job
minutes away.
there.
And so I started, like, I did a presentation at a place called Soul Seed, which is a kind of where a lot of teachers are coming in and they talk about esoteric subjects. And I did a presentation there, and a number of people, went to it and are now beginning to discover this because I'm taking them on these tours, and they're just fascinated, absolutely fascinated.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as like working on tours, I'm working with an energy worker right now, and so we're thinking to bring people to these sites and actually help them activate and like help them to learn how to tap into their energetic body and really feel what's going on in these sites, because these are power spots, basically.
Definitely, yes.
Many
Something,
times you
something is
can
going
go,
on there. Something is going on there.
yeah, something's going on there. And I frequently go there, and my dowsing rods are telling me, oh, okay, well, there's something going on at this particular seat, or this depression in the stone. It's sensing this energy. But your body can actually sense it as well. You don't need dowsing rods. They're just kind of a visual proofing. But you can sit on these, like some of the stones, like in Chinchero and various others, you can feel a vortex effect. And your body is like literally, feels like it's going up a little
Beautiful
vortex.
experience. That's a beautiful
Yeah,
experience you're taking
yeah.
to share with me. Good.
Other places you just feel, I've had, there's like, well, as I was mentioning, my friend, she recently got a download from the site, and this download was telling her, people need to come here because they can benefit from this for health reasons, consciousness raising. So yeah, I would love to have like energy workers come who really, have the machines that can sense this, or these energies, they're subtle energies, and just really figure out what is going on. For people who like a little more left brain proof as opposed to
Mhm.
right
Yeah.
brain.
No,
Sometimes
no.
you need that.
Well, let me tell you something. I went to Kia Rumijok.
Uh-huh.
The place of the translation is the place of the moon. Is one
Yeah.
hour and a half from
Oh
Cusco.
yeah.
So
It's a
you've been
great
there.
place.
When I went there, I was glad I was the only one, because
Mhm.
I felt the need to stop recording, lay down, and have a meditation.
Yeah.
All these places, 80%, 90% of these places have water, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Always water. It's
Mhm.
always a creek, underground water, or
Yeah.
something. But I
Right.
felt immediately the need to stop everything, lay down and relax. If I
Yes.
don't have to come back to America, I would have just fall asleep there for a moment.
Yeah.
I needed that. I don't know how to explain it. The
Mhm.
place is magical for me. It's like, Machu Picchu in certain areas. You feel so much peace, so much
Yes.
harmony. You see people doing yoga, meditation, tai chi,
Mhm. Yeah.
writing notes, feeling in harmony with between, Father Sky and Mother Earth. And you are
Yes.
in this pacha, this time and space. And what you're
Right.
doing is very interesting because we need that.
Yes.
We need to come to our senses, to come to our
Mhm.
center, which is also spiritual,
Yes.
the spiritual gift that we have to be
Right.
here on earth, to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful
Yeah.
what you're doing.
It is. Well, first of all, you're in some of the most beautiful natural spots in the world. You have this natural spring water bubbling up in many of these places, waterfalls. It seems like it was designed to really, benefit from the earth and the beauty of the earth and the energies that are there all around us. Um, and you have, yeah, rock that has frequently a lot of quartz, a lot of calcite, and those create kind of an electromagnetic field around these rocks. So you do feel like sometimes I go into them and I feel like, everything is buzzing in my body, and there's energy. And I just feel like so renewed, from spending 20 minutes in some of these, caverns and niches and yeah, it's just an incredible feeling. And I think people can really benefit from using these sites, as I do believe they were designed for that reason.
I believe the same because I cannot put into words. That feeling is beyond words sometimes. When you go to this stage of consciousness, there is a moment of peace and center yourself.
Yes.
And for people like me who likes to record almost everything, I'm aware that my batteries will be gone in minutes, even if a full recharge, just
Right.
to let you know, your cell phone thing.
Recharge your batteries in there.
They're gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's another reason besides their beauty. I also like going over there when I feel like I need an energy recharge and a reset, because sometimes we can be a little too much in our heads, and sometimes I think we need to play. We just need to enjoy nature, enjoy the beauty, and reset with the earth, in these sites.
Because look how it's nowadays.
Mhm.
We have to go to a temple or to a church and they have fences,
Mhm.
have a key to open the door of the church. But
Yeah,
if you go to those areas, it's open space
yeah, yeah,
and you feel it. There's no
yeah.
fence, there's no door, there's no locks. There's
Right,
nothing.
exactly.
You
And
have there
you
will
hear the
reflect.
trickle of water coming in. And there's this really beautiful waka. I think they call it the Gran Chincana in Chincheros.
Ah,
And it's in the back.
in the back of the
And
town. Yeah.
yeah, and there's this kind of like um, underneath this rock, they have this water flowing, but it's almost flowing all the way around the rock. And then on one side, there's like this tooth impression, but it's perfect rectilinear cuts in the rock. Um, and just this spring water is flowing in there. And that's just one of the most wonderful places to meditate. And they have like places you can sit, like niches on the rock. So you can go above it and sit in these niches. And you totally melt in this waka and just have a very profound healing experience.
That's
So
so
yeah.
nice because
Uh,
it's not only well, we can talk about the rocks on the cut on the tools, geopolymer or not,
yeah,
whatever, but there is
yeah.
something else. There's something special to these sites.
Yeah.
Camille, so you've been exploring and visiting all these less visited places and sites around
Mhm.
Sacsayhuaman in Cusco, but there has been an experience for you, something that you have felt, something that you have experienced. Can you share with us?
Uh, yeah. Well, many of these sites have had really strong, like energetic types of experiences. The one site I had mentioned earlier, which was near the Moon Temple, I believe it's called the Platzwaka, though there's no sign. You'd go in there and right at this niche where you can see a lot of people have put quintus and offerings. Um, it's like every time I go in there, I really have, it's like the air is charged. It's like there's electrons flowing in this space.
Rana,
And
Rana.
I always I'll do a 10-minute, 15-minute like meditation in this place. And um, I frequently come out very lightheaded. A lot of times my legs are shaking. And but it oddly enough, it feels like it's a healing. Like like something's going on in my body that seems to be healing it. And so I always feel like refreshed once I get out of the cave and recharged.
See.
I've also found other, in a place called Vilcabamba,
Yes,
and there's a place called the White Rock, Yurak, yeah, Roca.
Yurak Rumi.
Yeah, Yurak Rumi.
Yurak Rumi.
And while I was sitting on the main waka, or right by the water, though I didn't feel anything immediately, later on that night, I had a really kind of profound Kundalini experience. And
Oh, oh,
and
wow, that's very interesting. Please,
yeah,
excuse me, keep going.
and I just felt this energy like shoot up my spine, but and then this huge explosion, like right in my pineal gland. Uh, and um, and I was thinking, well, how did that come about? Because I'm in my hotel room, and I'm thinking, is it the hotel room? But it was so brilliant and bright. I figured it was because I spent pretty much the whole day in this particular area where this Yurak Rumi waka
The
is, and there's
sites
a
are
lot of other
very,
wakas.
very highly unusual design.
Yeah, yeah, it's very unusual. And you can even continue to go back and you'll find other formed rocks. That's not the only one, but there's many others that continue back. And yeah, so that experience was like so profound and so strong. I actually like kind of shot out of the bed because it was like so powerful. Um, and I kind of attribute that to spending all day at this particular site. And I guess I had a delayed reaction, but
Looks like you
yeah,
were absorbing the energy of the site, and then you needed to
yeah,
visit through this
right.
wonderful experience, Camille.
Yeah. And I sometimes think the ancients who were building these sites, they recognized that there were particular areas where they had this energy flow within the land. So perhaps all around that there were what called discontinuity zones
Hmm, hmm.
of having two different earth kind of fault lines where energy is flowing. And if you have that with water systems that are going on top of them, and then you have these wakas with piezoelectric energy in
Property. Yeah.
them,
Uh-huh.
yeah, in properties, you definitely have like these out of body experiences or uh, different changes in your consciousness as well. So, as many people do report at these sites.
So
So,
people right now are looking at these photographs of Yurak Rumi, and
yeah.
guys, if you go to Cusco, contact Camille, and she can tell you how to
Yeah,
get
I'll
there
show
and
you
have
around.
all these experience and meditations in these power places, which is power places.
Yeah,
And they are the same similar experiences are, when you talk to someone who are traveling Mexico or Egypt or
yeah,
in other places around the world, they have megalithic ancient sites that are not recorded by history, and they are part, of these remains that
yeah,
of an unknown culture that Camille has been and is doing research in Cusco. There's so much places to research in Cusco, with the
absolutely.
things that is not what you see on the pictures and photographs or the videos. There are also,
Right.
other places. So what is, can you share a final message for all the viewers, Camille?
Um,
What your
yeah,
thoughts about another project for another book? There is something else that you're
yeah,
planning to do, or
right. Well, I'd like to say, I think uh, if you have any interest at all in ancient history, perhaps wanting to learn more about ancient civilizations, or just coming to these sites for the sheer beauty and transformative nature of these sites, I would recommend coming to Peru. But as you say, Mexico and many other places, because it's people go on vacation, they go to Disneyland and they go to New York City, but sometimes it's just going to these nature spots. which cultures have recognized as being power spots for centuries. These are just really phenomenal places
And
that
it's priceless and admission free.
and admission free. Exactly. Exactly. That's what I love about it. I can go to these sites for 5 soles on the Colectivo.
Right.
It's really amazing.
Please show us your book again.
Oh, yeah. So here's the book, Sorcerers of Stone, published by Inner Traditions, Bear Company. And you can get it at Amazon, Simon Schuster's website, various other places too. If you visit my website, sorcerersofstone.com, it also gives you other places you can buy it as well if you don't want to use Amazon.
And
So,
all this information, all the links, related to her work, and Camille's going to be underneath the title of this video. And I hope you guys enjoy this interview in a colloquial way. Camille is still doing more research, is still walking around, is still taking pictures, and I really love her work. That was, I decided to interview her because something triggered, Camille to come from Hawaii to Cusco. What a change.
yeah.
And then write a book. And then right now, sharing all this information, and the most important thing, experiences. Her experience. That's what it counts. Experience count.
Yeah.
And
Well,
being
thank you.
place. She lives in the Sacred Valley. I envy you, Camille.
Well, thank you so much, Giacomo. It was wonderful, and I really love your work too. I watched pretty much all your videos. I think you probably have 100 now. It's a lot of videos, but great work. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Camille. We're gonna be in touch, and don't go. But my friends, remember, all the information about Camille is gonna be underneath the title. And this is Giacomo Longato, Peruvian, living in California, independent author and researcher. If you like this video, please share and stay in touch. See you soon, guys.